Welcome to Imaginary Lands, the works of award-winning author and storyteller Bobby Pell. Today's selection, The Selfish Giant, is a favorite fairy tale of mine, written by Irish Victorian dramatist and author Oscar Wilde, depicting the story of two hearts, one selfish, the other magical. When a giant encounters an unusual child within his garden, more than the seasons are transformed in this story of the power of unconditional love.
The next story I want to tell you is a fairy tale that comes from Oscar Wilde. It is entitled The Selfish Giant. In this story, watch and see how unconditional love, as we saw in the marriage of Gawain, truly can make a difference in one's life. There once was a giant. The giant was known to visit his friends often, and he would walk. Everyone knew it was the giant. Everyone heard him. And the children, when they heard that sound, knew that the giant was going away. Now this made them happy because you see, the giant had an incredible garden. He had the most beautiful garden in the entire village. It had flowers that looked like stars had fallen from the sky to grace the earth. He had 12 peach trees that lined the garden, that when they blossomed were the whitest, pinkest blooms ever seen, and with a sweet fragrance that filled the air. The children would come and they would run in the garden and they would climb up all in the trees and they would smell the flowers, and breezes would blow gently, and there was magic in the garden. Spring rejoiced when they came. The giant was gone for quite a long time, but soon he returned, and they all heard him as he came. When he entered his garden, he saw the children. "What are you doing in my garden? You can't stay here. Get out all of you. I'll show you. I will build a wall of stone 10 feet high." And so he did. He also made a sign that said, "Keep out, especially children." Well, the children were dismayed. They now had no place to play. There was nothing but dirt and stones and sticks in the road, no other garden like his. When spring came along in her season, she saw the wall. She saw the sign. "I will not visit this garden. That giant is too selfish." And she left. The giant wondered when he saw all of his neighbors, the flowers in their gardens blooming, blossoming, why his garden remained in winter. For you see, the only ones truly happy about this event was winter friends. Snow came, and she cried to them all, Look, spring has forgotten this garden. We can stay here all year." And so they did. And she came with her downy flakes, and she spread a mantle of snow. Frost came with his silver paintbrush, and he painted all of the branches silver. The north wind blew, and nothing grew. The giant sat by the window, and he wondered what was going on. Seasons passed, and soon it came again when spring should be arriving. The giant was sitting in his chair by the window, and he thought he heard a sound of music. "Why, it must be the king's musicians." And he opened up the window, and looking out, expecting to see the musicians marching by, found nothing but a tiny bird, a small linnet. It had been so long since he had heard their sweet sound that he had forgotten. And the bird had returned, for when the giant looked into his garden, there was a surprise. The peach trees, they all were in blossom. The flowers had risen and were shining in the sunlight. Spring had returned, for you see, the children had found a hole in the wall and had crept through. And there was a child in every tree, and they bounced around, and once again there was magic in the garden. The giant looked at all of this. I now know why it is that spring left. I see. I wasn't giving freely of what I had. I was being too selfish, hanging on to things that should have been shared. And as this came to him, he noticed that one tree in the very farthest corner of the garden still remained heavy with snow, and the north wind blew above it. Below the tree stood a little boy. The giant watched as the boy strained to climb into the branches, and the tree strained to reach to him. Climb, boy, climb into my branches so I may feel spring. But the little boy cried, I'm too small. I can't reach you. The giant left his house and came into the garden. I will help this boy, he thought. And as he entered the garden, the children saw him, and they ran in fear and hid themselves. And when they did, spring was gone, and the entire garden remained in winter. But the giant didn't notice this. He made his way directly to that little boy, and that little boy was crying so hard he did not hear the giant. He was crying so hard he did not see the giant. The giant stole behind him, lifted that boy up, placed him in the very top branches of that tree. And the very second that he did that, the snow melted away. The whitest, pinkest blossoms appeared, and a fragrance like the giant had never smelled before filled his garden. The little boy was so happy, he grabbed the giant around the neck and gave him a big old kiss. And when he did, the giant felt a warmth like liquid lava flowing through his whole body. He'd never known love before. Come, children, come back, it is fine, come play. And they did, and as they did, the snow vanished and melted into nothingness, and spring returned, and there was magic in the garden. I will take down the wall, I will take down the sign. Children, you must come and play. Every day you can come. This will be our garden. I will share it with you. They played all day. And somehow he lost track of this little boy, this new best friend. As the children were leaving, he said to them, Now be sure that you bring that little boy back with you. We will try, they said, but we don't know him. We've never seen him before, but we'll try. And so they left. The next day, the giant took down the wall, and the children came, and they played all day. But the little boy didn't return. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. The seasons came and fell in their accordance. When winter came now, the giant knew it was all right, for spring was resting and the flowers were simply sleeping. But he never saw that little boy. One morning he sat by his window. It was winter. But he saw early morning light, a light that was brighter than dawn. He opened the window and he looked in the garden. There was snow on most of the trees, except for one. That one tree in the farthest corner, it shone with pink and white blossoms. It shone so brightly, it was as if a halo were surrounding it. Its limbs and branches were gold, and from it hung silver fruit. And beneath the tree stood the little boy. The giant was filled with such joy. He ran from the house, and as he got closer to the little boy, as he saw him more clearly, rage began to fill his heart. "Who has done this to you?" he cried. "Who has hurt you in this way? I will take out my sword and slay them." For you see, he noticed that the boy had nail prints in his hands and nail prints in his feet. "No, giant, these are wounds of love. It is all right. I tell you, giant, this. Many years ago, you let me come into your garden. You let me play. Know, giant, that this day you will play in my garden in paradise." The next morning, the children came to the garden. They found the body of the giant lying underneath that tree with a blanket of white petals upon him. But it was all right, for the giant now lived and played in fields of delight with his new best friend, the selfish giant.